Hi, I'm Paul Abraham. I'm based out of Mumbai. I'm a career banker, currently heading the Hinduja Foundation and also running a digital museum initiative called Sarmaya. While exploring what ails society today, we have to put it to a philosophy of excessive and irresponsible consumption. We have to pause and rewind to examine the journey that got us here. To my mind, it started with the colonization of the world by the European powers. While the initial foray started with trade, it soon descended into political control, using the force of armies to subjugate nations and transport their resources to Europe. This significantly enhanced the well being of their citizens and supported increased consumption. USA followed Europe to become the preeminent economy of the 20th century, owing in large measure to the large industrial models that supported a rapidly growing consumerist society that predicated its economics on increased and excessive consumption. This was followed by Japan, that brought to bear engineering skills to make things cheaper, but continuing to support rapidly increasing global consumption. And last but not the least, the cheap labor driven models of China supported global manufacturing at scales which drove down costs further. The world was obsessed and still seems to be driven to make things cheaper and accessible in the belief that we have to find newer templates of production to make things cheaper and sustain burgeoning demand. Where has this left us? It has created an incredible inequality in society. It has caused conflict and war due to the increasing demand for natural resources like land and water and the pressure to control resources. These conflicts create greater displacement and more anguish. The world has chosen to ignore the value of externalities and refuse to value the many resources it readily accessed for free, leaving in its wake polluted air, damaged ecosystems, species loss, eroding biodiversity, poisoned waters, compromised soil conditions, illnesses fed by toxic consumption, and poor lifestyles and poor nutrition. In our march to so called progress and well being, we forgot to calculate the price this home we call Earth has been made to pay. We forgot that nature should be our sustaining force, a source of wonder and security. We need to live with nature and not seek to master it through exploitation. We need to appreciate the need for balance. We need to ease off on scaling patterns of consumption and bring to bear all our endeavors and technology to scale patterns of conservation. The belief that economic wealth brings unbridled security is a false one. The coronavirus has amply proven that to all of us. The destruction of wealth and economic value has been unprecedented, and models of growth are being shown up as hollow. When nature chooses to wake up, the corrective slaps to humankind can be devastating. If we don't pay heed now, we may never have another chance to course correct. We have to accept a few hard truths. The age of incremental action is definitely over. The world needs united action in mission mode. Time for platitudes and conferences are long gone. The world belongs to everyone. Us humans, the animal kingdom, the birds and the insects. There cannot be false trade offs anymore. Extractive consumption cannot fuel prosperity. There is a price to resource use we have ignored for too long. Homogenization of everything is not a solution. Creating scale and uniformity and losing biodiversity in the process needs to be revisited. The business of conservation and sustainability has to be mainstreamed. It should be front and center of all corporate leaders and governments. There has to be a global call for action now that has to be the business of every individual, society, nation, and institution. We need to move into mission mode. When I see these issues from the perspective of a banker, I see a change. These past years, the money facing off to climate change and solutions addressing the problems has grown to an estimated $35 trillion. While societies have started questioning choices made by countries and corporates, I feel the world is still largely in a mode of I will atone for my sins by throwing money at compensatory payouts. Tradable emission certificates, tariff support programs, development bonds, impact financing, carbon credits are all important initiatives. However, we need to have strict environmental audits, penalties that hurt, and transparent adherence to ESG guidelines and SDG goals. They must be part of everybody's lexicon and KRAs. Sustainable and environment-friendly growth must be our way of life and not a regulatory compliance-led item. The world of finance has to be a key facilitator of sustainable growth. When I wear my foundation hat, I see the need for interventions that rapidly reverse ecological damage and add to the valuable natural infrastructure in our country. We need many more agencies on the ground and supportive government policies that boost public-private participation and solutions of scale. Interventions must make stakeholders appreciate that forests are not timber, but carbon sinks, source of rivers and fresh water, keepers of biodiversity and much more. The economic costs of replacements are huge. It's easier to conserve than destroy and replace. So we promote greening, we restore lakes, rivers and spring sheds, we harvest rainwater and we recycle. We also educate about the significant consequences of faulty crop patterns. Our interventions in education seek to alter current pedagogy in an effort to develop future-ready citizens. Young minds who learn to build solutions to our problems of today, demonstrate increased empathy, learning to eat right and consume resources responsibly, be secure citizens, and most importantly, learning the all-important virtue of sharing. Our interventions in rural India empower women, create jobs, invest in primary health, and increase self-reliance. It is a strong belief that the village should be where prosperity is ensured and where the artisanal creativity and cultural regeneration is supported and guaranteed. When I wear my museum hat, I believe that investing in interventions, in creating awareness around an incredible arts and cultural legacy pays off in the form of a more humane and sensitive citizenry that is rooted in its legacies and firmly believes in diversity as a form of enrichment, requiring support and to fight off the constant temptation to other. We need to learn from our ancient wisdom, our culture which lived in harmony with nature, consuming only to meet its needs and not its greed. Our arts are replete with this symbiotic connection with nature. Maybe in this 150th anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi, it is useful to keep in mind his philosophy of mindful consumption, keeping the villages of rural India and their well-being central to our policies, and that micro-area development through local empowerment is also a viable route to sustainability. At a more philosophical level, the world needs to invest in a different construct of politics, a politics of the grassroots that avoids top-down prescription and centralization, a politics that decentralizes and localizes and empowers, a politics that is smart and understands the centrality of conservation of nature to the well-being of humankind and the many linkages of poor and short-sighted policy to climate change and the disruptions of our times. A politics that supports investment in greener technologies and solutions, and one which discourages the extractive and polluting industries. As a society, we must accept the earth as our common home. We need to consume consciously. We need to be willing to pay a right price, not just to better our condition, but the collective condition of all living beings. The animals, birds, insects, and marine life must all have secure homes where they can thrive, and that we have to learn to live in harmony. We need to promise that we will not let a single living being go extinct. We will fight the illegal trade in wildlife. We will start to consume responsibly, so animal farms are not places of torture and suffering and exaggerated consumers of food, grain, and water. We need to make it fashionable to share and desist from hoarding. Our values define our rituals, and they in turn are heroes. We have to change our perception of who is successful. We have to find new symbols to our culture. We need to make heroes of those who serve and share. We need to believe in different things. We need to believe that time spent in our own communities, our families, reading a book, walking the woods, helping indigenous art and craft are all essential to our well-being. We need to enjoy the stories of the world, a world we have to protect and live in harmony with. COVID has been an invitation to pause, listen, and act.